Welcome back to the Gridiron Expert. We have a huge top 25 SEC matchup as number 16 Mississippi State travels to take on number 22 Kentucky in a series that has been pretty even over these last few years. The home team has won 7 straight games between the Bulldogs and the Wildcats. They've split the last 6 meetings clearly as a whole. So signs technically would point to a Kentucky victory on Saturday if the pattern were to continue. But that is far from guaranteed. So again, guys, welcome back to the Gridiron Expert, ready to break down everything you need to know for this matchup between the Bulldogs and the Wildcats. And of course, sharing our official prediction for what will happen in Lexington. Before we get started, please continue to like, comment, subscribe, share our videos, and of course, check out everything down in the description below, including our expert picks over on our website, thegridironexpert.com. Some of the best college football and NFL spread picks in the entire country over there, guys, for one of the lowest prices in the entire country as well, hitting over 80% of our money line bets, over 60% of our spread predictions, beating out over 80% of the national analysts each of the last 4 years. Sign up today, guys. Become a part of our GE Nation. Help us grow and help you make a little bit of money. Gridiron Expert picks over on our website. Link down in the description below. All right, let's dive into this game, guys. Again, a game that, prior to Kentucky's loss to South Carolina could have been a top 20 showdown, a top 15 showdown. But Kentucky fell to the Gamecocks last week, but again, was without Will Levis. So we'll factor that in when we talk about Kentucky's offense. But first, let's talk about Mississippi State and their offense. Let's start breaking down the personnel. And when you look at the Bulldogs, guys, you know what you're getting offensively. You're getting that air raid offense that Mike Leach loves to run. And the thing is, they run it pretty dang well. They run it very effectively. The Bulldogs, guys, are averaging 354.7 passing yards per game behind one of the best quarterbacks, not just in the SEC, but in the country. Will Rogers has already thrown for over 2,100 yards, 22 touchdowns, and just 3 interceptions. The guy is unreal. He's in the perfect system, and Leach finally has his quarterback. Had him last year. He's doing even better things this year. He's got a great wide receiver core to go along with him, guys. I mean, we talked about this back in the preseason, that this probably was the best Mississippi State team that Mike Leach has fielded since he arrived in Starkville. You've got Rara Thomas. You've got Caleb Ducking. Both of those guys have over 300 reception yards on the year and have combined for 10 touchdowns. The run game also has been more present this year. Mississippi State averaging over 100 rushing yards per game, led by Dylan Johnson, who has 402 rushing yards and 3 touchdowns on the year. So yes, Mississippi State wants to throw the ball. They're going to air it out. But if you give them room to run, they're going to take it. They're going to take you up on that. They did very well with that against Arkansas. They did pretty well with that against Texas A&M. Mississippi State, the ground game is there, and they're not balanced per se, but the run game is more of a threat than it has been in years past. You can't completely sell out on the pass. When you take a look at Kentucky, guys, the offense is just beat up. Major concerns here. And as of this filming, a lot of the top players that are on the injury report are day-to-day for us, and that is the main one, of course, Will Levis. So as of this filming, we do not know for sure whether Will Levis will play on Saturday against Mississippi or not. We would imagine that he would. Right now, he's day-to-day. With him, the Wildcats are averaging 26.3 points per game, over 260 passing yards per game. Levis has over 1,400 yards, 12 touchdowns on the year, and takes phenomenal care of the football. The Wildcats missed him big time last week against South Carolina, only mustering 14 points, struggling offensively for the majority of the day. But it doesn't stop there. Will Levis is injured. He's not going to be 100% if he does play, or he might sit out. They also might be without their top 2 wide receivers. Kentucky wide receiver Tavion Robinson and Dane Key. Again, the top 2 wide receivers on the roster are both battling injuries right now. If they are both out for this game, or not 100%, the Kentucky offense will sputter just like they did against South Carolina, because the Wildcats don't even have much of a run game. The Wildcats are averaging just 92.5 rushing yards per game. So even if Levis does play, they are going to need Chris Rodriguez and Kavasier Smoke and guys like that to step up big time on the ground game to give Kentucky a little bit more of a balance and not allow the Mississippi State defense to really not fear them. Defensively, not fear them. Last week, Mississippi State did not fear Arkansas offensively. They did not fear Texas A&M offensively. They have a lot of faith in Zach Arnett's defense, and we have a very good feeling they will have the same against a Wildcats team that, again, is struggling on the ground and could be starting Kaya Sharon back at quarterback, who was solid last week with 178 yards and 2 touchdowns. but clearly not the guy they want under center. When you look at Mississippi State and their defense, guys, like we just mentioned, many say this was one of the best that Mike Leach has fielded since he arrived in Starkville, maybe the best that he has allowed or had in Starkville. They're allowing just 21 points per game so far this year, just 358 total yards per game. You look at the numbers. Mississippi State's giving up 138 rushing yards a game, 219 passing yards a game. Both those pretty exceptional marks. So again, the run game's been pretty stingy. I don't see Kentucky having much success. This will not be the breakout game for Chris Rodriguez. This will not be the breakout game for Kavosiey Smoke. So if Kentucky wants to win this game, they're going to have to air it out with whoever is under center, whether it is Levis or whether it is Sharon. The one thing that Mississippi State is doing extremely well is generating pressure and generating turnovers. So far, the Bulldogs have 14 sacks on the year. They have forced 12 turnovers so far this season. And outside of their loss in Death Valley to LSU, the most points they've allowed in a single game was 24, and that was to Texas A&M, a game they won 42-24. Didn't even matter that much. So this Mississippi State defense, guys, is stingy. They're extremely underrated and have a great opportunity to put on a fantastic display against a beat-up Kentucky offense. When you look at Kentucky, typically under Mark Stoops, they have been a very solid defensive team, but that has not necessarily been the biggest case this year. Of course, they are going to be without one of their star players defensively and linebackers, Jaquez Jones, who was hurt against Ole Miss, who missed the South Carolina game, will miss the game against Mississippi State as well. They're giving up just 174.2 passing yards per game and just 133 rushing yards per game. But Kentucky is failing to generate pressure. You know, we praised Kentucky in recent years about how strong they have been in the trenches. We really have not seen that much from Kentucky this year. Not much push on the offensive line, certainly not much on the defensive line. The Wildcats have just 8 sacks so far on the year. And their secondary, while they have only allowed 174.2 passing yards per game, is now facing their toughest test yet, obviously with an air raid offense. And their secondary hasn't looked all that great these last few weeks. They allowed 177 passing yards to South Carolina. They allowed 213 passing yards to Ole Miss. They allowed 179 rushing yards to South Carolina. They allowed 186 rushing yards to Ole Miss. Back-to-back losses for the Wildcats, hoping not to see a third straight loss. But regardless, in those 2 games, they struggled in stopping the pass. They clearly struggled in stopping the run. And that's what we mentioned earlier with Mississippi State's offense, is the run game has been more available and has been better than it's ever been since Leach took over in Starkville. Dylan Johnson is a legitimate threat on the ground game. They want to air it out, but if you can't stop the run, let Will Rogers have the day off. And so Kentucky's going to have a very big test on their hands. They're going to have their hands full, and not only trying to bottle up the run, but trying to stop this air raid attack. That's how complex and tough this Mississippi State offense is. So the key for Kentucky is to obviously make them one-dimensional. The passing defense hasn't been horrible. So if they can truly make Mississippi State's run game a non-factor, truly a non-factor, the Bulldogs won't be, fazed by that because they love to air it out, but it's going to allow Kentucky to hone in more on the pass. Rushing 3, dropping 8 did not work last week for Arkansas. It was bad for them. It'll be interesting to see what kind of defensive scheme Kentucky brings to the table on Saturday. Do they rush 3 and have more faith in their secondary and have faith in giving Will Rogers tons of time rushing 3? They only have 8 sacks on the year. They're not even creating much pressure enough as it is. Whatever Kentucky comes up with, they have to make sure the run game is a non-factor, that they're getting limited yards or tackles for losses, and that way the secondary can completely hone in on the air raid. So what is going to happen, guys? Big-time showdown in Lexington. This is huge for both teams. Kentucky is eliminated from SEC title contention. It's gone. 2 losses to Ole Miss and South Carolina. They haven't even played Georgia. They haven't even played Tennessee. Contending for an SEC East title, it's out of the question. But if you're Kentucky, you want to try to stay in the rankings. You want to try to salvage another successful season. You don't want to see yourself go into a 3-game losing streak. Mississippi State here, they're 16th in the country. If they go on the road and beat a quality Kentucky team, regardless of who's playing or who's not, this would be impressive for them to move to 6-1, clinch bowl eligibility, and maybe solidify themselves as the second best team in the West. I know Ole Miss is in there, but I think Mississippi State could give Ole Miss quite a bit of run if they were to play right now. So Mississippi State keeps their conference title hopes alive. They keep their slim playoff hopes alive and could set up a big showdown against Alabama next week if they win this game. And I will be honest, I believe that's exactly what's going to happen. I believe that Mississippi State wins this game on the road at Kentucky. They end that streak. 7 years in a row we have seen the home team win in this series. Mississippi State ends that pattern. They end that streak. They go on the road and steal a win. Kentucky's reeling, guys. They are heartbroken over the Ole Miss loss. They're beat up. They lost to South Carolina. The injuries have riddled them on both sides of the ball, and I think that Mississippi State takes advantage of that. I've been very, very impressed with the Bulldogs so far this year, and I think they show out in a big way. Kentucky's defense does not have an answer for this high-octane Mississippi State offense. The Bulldogs jump into the top 15, and if you weren't taking them seriously before, you better start taking Mike Leach and the Bulldogs seriously now, because they are the real deal and will win in Lexington on Saturday. So guys, as always, thank you so much for watching us here at the Gridiron Expert on YouTube. Make sure to continue to like, comment, subscribe, share our videos, and of course, check out everything down in the description below, including our expert picks over on our website, thegridironexpert.com. Some of the best college football and NFL spread picks in the entire country, and we want you to take advantage of those. Sign up today and become a part of our GE Nation. And once again, guys, as always, thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you next time right here on the Gridiron Expert.